Привit, I'm Chuck Olenek. I'm a Ukrainian-American baptized with the name Yaroslav, and that's the name I use in the historical reenactment group, the Society for Creative Anachronism. Since I left the classroom, I used to teach world history, I've been putting together videos on various subjects. And one of my focus areas has been Eastern Europe. And I'm trying to put together videos to provide a starting place for anyone that might be interested in developing an Eastern European persona. So, hey, also just learning stuff is cool. Of course, I would think that because I was a teacher. So in my videos on Slavic mythology, folklore, culture, and history, I've mostly concentrated on Kiev as the center of Rus lands. And part of that is because of my Ukrainian heritage and the fact that, Russia has invaded Ukraine and the war's been going on for almost 2 years now. And I want to create more of an awareness of Ukrainian culture. Also, before the fall of the Soviet Union, it was difficult to find information that was on Ukraine. It was usually subjugated or buried by, Russian history writers or Soviet history writers. So this is an attempt to kind of shed light in a few areas. Okay, here's the irony. I was focusing on Kiev, but now the focus has to shift north. The center's unable to hold. And in the last history video that I did, number 87, if you're counting, the attention was on the Principality of Vladimir Suzdal, because Kiev was no longer the actual center. But there's another place that we need to look at, Novgorod, or Novgorod, all right? I'm not going to get suckered into trying to jam all this information into one video. That's not going to work. I had to do a bunch of videos for Kiev's history. So now I'll do the same for Novgorod. All right, archaeologists have dug up evidence basically showing that in the 9th century, Novgorod was a large settlement, more like a chain of settlements. And there were Slavic and Finnic tribes living there, and Scandinavians had moved in, and they were calling the territory Gardariki, the realm of towns. According to tradition, Novgorod land was one of the centers of formation of Kievan Rus. The Novgorod First Chronicle, a collection of writings depicting the history of the place from 1016 to 1471, calls it a great and abundant land, and records the legend of the invitation of the Varangians, traditionally dated to 862, that its inhabitants wanted to seek a prince who may rule over us and judge us according to law, and therefore invited Rurik and others to rule over them. I'm going to admit my biases right here. I have never bought the invitation story, but history is written by the winners. I usually call it the potato people theory. And the reason I'm calling it that is it also includes the Irish. Oh, look, the nice Norsemen came and they built Dublin for the Irish, who are obviously too dumb to build their own capital. And here we got the Slavs. We're too dumb to rule ourselves. We'd rather be your serfs. So we built these nice cities for you to move into. Please come rule us. I doubt people choose serfdom as an option. So, at the end of the 9th century, beginning of the 10th centuries, according to the chronicles, the center of the Rurikid state, that's going to move from Novgorod to Kiev. In 980, Novgorod's Prince Volodymyr Sviatoslavich the Baptist, okay, he's going to later be Saint Volodymyr, or Volodymyr the First, he overthrew his eldest half-brother, Yaropolk, who was ruling in Kiev. Yaropolk had murdered his other half-brother, Oleg. So somehow this is all justified. 9 years after expanding his rule, Volodymyr and pretty much everybody living in Kiev adopted Christianity. That's when Volodymyr herded his people into the Dnipro River and said, hey, now you're all Christians. Then he turns his eyes northward. In the 990s, Novgorod's refusing to convert to Christianity. But Volodymyr baptized them by force with fire and sword, and many of the people of Novgorod were killed, and the whole city was burned down. That taught them to be good Christians. In 1010, Yaroslav, one of the whole bunch of sons of Volodymyr's, was sent from Rostov, where he was governing, to Novgorod, as befitted a senior heir to the throne. While living there, Novgorod became his main power base, and he managed to unite the principalities for a time. But from 1015 to 1019, Yaroslav's going to be waging a really complicated and really bloody war for control of Kiev against his half-brother Sviatopolk I, also called Sviatopolk the Accursed. The reason he's called the Accursed is because he's accused of murdering two of his brothers, Boris and Gleb, who later get made saints. All right, eventually Yaroslav wins. He overthrows his brother. And one of his first actions as Grand Prince was because the people of Novgorod had his back through this civil war. As soon as he got on the throne, he granted all kinds of freedoms and privileges to Novgorod, including the Yaroslav's Law, and it's going to later become the Ruskaya Pravda, and also a charter, which becomes the prototype for the charter that Novgorod is going to use when they are going to invite princes to rule in. Notice I said invite, because that's going to be showing up later as part of the Republic. Okay, so the foundation for what people are more familiar with in period, the Novgorod Republic, foundations have been laid. If you want to know more about the Ruskaya Pravda, that's in Tales of the Borderland 44. All right, so that's the fuller version. Okay. For their part, the Novgorodians respected Yaroslav more than they did any of the other princes from Kiev, and the princely residence in their city, next to the marketplace and where the Vice, the public assembly, was held, was named Yaroslav's court after him. And if you want to know more about the Vice, that's in Borderland number 43. In the 11th century, the governor, and that's going to be the person ruling in Kiev and would inevitably be the son of the Veliki Knyaz, the grand prince that's in Kiev. He's going to still have a lot of power. And in that same period, there's an institution that arises, and these are the posadniks. In the society, we use posadnik as a Russian alternative title to baron. So I just thought I'd mention that, or one of the alternative titles. And the posadniks, they have the job of, they were going to rule Novgorod at a time when the prince isn't there. So it's Picard, number one takeover. All right, you have the calm. And if the prince happens to be a minor, then that situation is going to take place. Like it happened in 1088 when Vsevolod Yaroslavich sent his grandson Mstislav to reign in Novgorod. In 1095, you're going to start to see things go to crap. The Novgorodians, they got dissatisfied with the absence of their prince, David Sviatoslavich, and they returned Mstislav to power. 7 years later, they're going to oppose the attempt of the Kiev prince to replace Mstislav with his son. And so now you're starting to see the key Republican authorities, the Vice, the prince, and the Posadnik, they're going to emerge in the late 11th century. The people of Novgorod were paying tribute to whoever was Grand Prince, the Veliki Knyaz, in Kiev. Okay, that was recorded in the chronicles, and they may have been paying tribute, but the Novgorodians, they were not easy to govern at all. They began to assert greater control over the determination of their rules, and they rejected the idea of being politically dependent upon Kiev. In 1117, without taking into account the opinion of the people of Novgorod, Mstislav, who was popular, was recalled to the south by his father, and Prince Vsevolod Mstislavich was seated on the throne. Well, some boyars opposed this, and what they did is because they were looking at it as that connection with Kiev, well, they got thrown in prison. By the way, this incident might have related to the Belina, the story of Stavir Hodinovich. Because, hey, writers are going to use, what they know, grist for their mill. After the death of Mstislav the Great in 1132, the tendencies towards political fragmentation deepened, and the Prince of Novgorod lost the support of the central government. A couple of years after Mstislav's passing, in 1134, Vsevolod was expelled from the city. He returned to Novgorod, and he was forced to conclude a row with the Novgorodians, limiting his authority. The next year, in January, the army of Novgorod, led by Vsevolod and Zyaslav Mstislavich, lost the Battle of Zhnaya Mountain to the army of Suzdal Prince Yuri Dolgoruki, or Yuri Longfingers. And I've mentioned him before. The next year, in May, in connection with the dissatisfaction of Novgorod with the actions of Prince Vsevolod, he was taken into custody and he was expelled from Novgorod. So this is going to mark the beginning of a time where the people of Novgorod are going to invite princes in. It's not a republic yet. They may call themselves that, but it's not a republic yet, because who they were inviting was kind of based upon who was in Kiev. That was a big deal. All right, now, with the beginnings of the republic, though, the administration of the principality is going to mature a bit. There's going to be a couple of the different offices, like I mentioned, the Posadniki. There's another group called the Tisiatsky. And the Tisiatsky, they were rulers of 1,000. And they appointed boyars from the cities, and they collected revenues for the administration in the territories. And there was a charter that was written in the 1130s that mentioned 30 administrative posts in the Novgorod territory, where revenues were collected regularly and sent as a tithe to the Novgorod bishop. Now, during this era, and during the era of Kiev being in charge, Novgorod was a trade hub at the northern end of both the Volga trade route and the route from the Varangians to the Greeks. along the Dnipro River system. And there were a lot of goods going back and forth along these routes and exchanged with local Novgorod merchants and other traders. There were traders from Gotland who retained a trading house that was in Novgorod. So, you're kind of seeing there's going to be a connection to the Hanseatic League. Now, this is where we're really starting getting into the Republic, but I'm going to cut this off here and I'm going to put that in another video because that really deserves a lot more time. So, until the next time, do побачення.